Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is that you are watching this. I hope it's a good one. In this video, we are going to continue our journey studying the real numbers by taking a look at how to convert percents, decimals, and fractions, and how to go from one to the other in different directions. Before we can do that, I'd like to do a really quick review from several lessons ago about changing a fraction to a decimal. When you change a fraction to a decimal, so let's say we want to take 3/5 and change it to a decimal, so it would be point some stuff. Those are numbers, not hashtags. When that is our goal, we do the numerator. Remember, the numerator is the top number, divided by the denominator. Remember, the denominator is down, so it is the bottom number. Now, when you're putting this in the calculator, please be sure that you put it in the right order. If we want numerator divided by denominator, that means we would enter 3, hit the divide button, and then enter the 5. When you plug that into your calculator, you end up with 0.6 as your decimal. But sometimes we need to change a decimal to a percent. So we've got some examples down below. One of the things you can do is take apart the word percent. Per means to divide. It means to take it apart into little pieces. The cent part of that word comes from the Latin root. That means 100. So we have a century that is 100 years. There are 100 centimeters in a meter. So quite literally, percent means divide 100. So if we're going to take a look at a decimal, my brain shorted out on me there for just a second. So if we're going to start with a decimal and change it to a percent, you have two choices. Your first option is to multiply the decimal by 100. Then add the percent sign. To the back. The other option is to move the decimal two places to the right. I'm going to do both ways. You pick the one that works for you. So if I want to change 0.45 or 45 hundredths to a decimal or to a percent, if I'm going to use the first method, I would go to my calculator and I would do 0.45 times 100. That's going to give me 45, and I put the percent on the back. The other option was simply to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So if I'm starting with 0.45 and I want to move the decimal 2 places to the right, there's 1 place and there's 2 places. So I end up with 45. That decimal is now right behind the 5, but we don't write it. Whoops. Apparently I'm on the struggle bus today. And we put the percent on the back. Whichever way works for you is what I want you to do. This one's a little bit different. We are going to start off the same way. If you want the first method, we take 0.444. That is our decimal, and we are going to multiply by 100. When you put that in the calculator, you end up with 44.4. Then you put the percent sign on the back. It is totally fine to have a decimal inside your percent value. Completely normal. If you want the second method, we start with the regular old decimal. We move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. So you end up with 44.4%. This time, because there are numbers to the right of the decimal, you have to leave the decimal there. You can't get rid of that one. We'll go take a look at this one. It's a little bit different still because we have a whole number to the left of the decimal place. We are not going to treat it any differently. If we want to do the first way, we start with 2.38 and we multiply by 100. That gives me 238, and I put the percent on the back. Yes, you can have a percentage that is bigger than 100 if we're talking about a percent increase. You could have a 238% increase in prices or usage on an electronic device. So that's a valid answer. If we do it the second way, and we move the decimal 2 places to the right, you still end up with 238. The decimal would end up right behind the 8. And we put the percent on the back once again. We don't have anything behind the decimal. There's no numbers back there, so we don't have to put it down. Now let's say we want to take it one step farther and we want to change that percent to a fraction. So we are going to start off again with the idea of the percent. Percent means we're going to divide by 100. So we're going to drop the percent sign. First thing we're going to do. Once we drop the percent sign, we are going to divide by 100. And really, we're just going to create a fraction with a 100 in the denominator. and then we'll reduce the fraction if we can. So we'll start off with 7%. The first step was to drop the percent sign. So there's my 7. Divide it by 100, which really means we're going to put a 100 in the denominator. The third step says to reduce if possible. Well, I know 7 is a prime number, so it can only be divided by 1 and 7. So this will not reduce. If I go look at 50%, I drop off the percent symbol. I put 100 in the denominator because a percent is simply parts out of 100. This one I can reduce. I can reduce both of these by a factor of 50. 50 divided by itself is 1. 100 divided by 50 is 2. So the fraction equivalent for 50% is 1/2. Now we've got a percentage that is bigger than 100, but that's okay. We're going to use the same process. Take off the percent. We're going to rewrite the number with a 100 in the denominator, and we reduce. I can divide both of these by 25. If you need your calculator, by all means, pull it out. I know that 4 times 25 is 100, so 8 times 25 would be 200. 9 times 25 would be 225. And again, there are 4 25s inside 100, so 9/4 is a fraction equivalent for 225%. So now, let's take a look at going from a percent to a decimal. One more time, we are going to drop the percent sign. To go from a percent to a decimal, we want to divide by 100, and that's it. The other option is to move the decimal 2 places to the left. So I'm going to drop off the percent sign on the first example on 7%. It's just a 7 now. And then I'm going to divide it by 100. If I put that in my calculator, I end up with 0.07. That is the decimal equivalent of 7%. Your other option is if you want to just move the decimal. If we start with 7%, we're going to take off the percent just like normal, but realize the decimal right now is sitting behind the 7. If we want to move it 2 places to the left, that's this way. I'm going to move it 2 jumps. But now I have a hole I have to fill up. I'm going to fill up my hole with a 0. So my decimal equivalent to 7% is 0.07, no matter which route you take. So we'll go take a look at 11%. I drop off the percent symbol, and I divide by 100. That gives me 0.11 or 11 hundredths. If I want to move the decimal, my decimal initially is sitting behind the 11. I'm going to take off the percent, and I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the left. So I end up with 0.11 again. The last one, I can divide by 100. I drop off the percentage. I put the top back on my 5. I divide by 100, and I get 2.15. This is the decimal equivalent for 215%. If I want to simply move the decimal place, my decimal should be behind the 215. If I drop the percentage, I'm going to move the decimal 1, 2 places to the left. And I get 2.15, either way I look at it. Down at the bottom, you've got some practice. Here's a fraction, make the decimal and the percent. Here's the decimal, make the fraction and the percent. So we'll go through a few of these. We may not do them all. To go from a fraction to a decimal, all I have to do is divide. So if I do 3 divided by 5, I get 0.6. If I want to go from a decimal to a percent, I multiply by 100. So this would give me 60%. This time, I want to go from a decimal to a percent. That one is the easier one. I multiply by 100, so I end up with 64%. To go from a decimal to a fraction, I want to put the 64 over 100 and reduce. I know that I can divide both of those by 2. That would get me not that. 32 over 50. If I reduce by 2 again, I could get 16 over 25. And I'm pretty sure that is as reduced as it's going to get. Now I want to go backwards all the way. I want to start with a percent and go back to a decimal. So that means I'm going to divide by 100. That's going to give me 0.32 for a decimal. Then to go backwards to a fraction, I put 32 over 100. I can divide both of those by 4. 32 divided by 4 is 8. 100 divided by 4 is 25, so there's my fraction. The last one, I'm starting with a mixed number and I want to go to a decimal. Well, I know I need one whole in my decimal, so I'm going to start with that. And then 3/4, if I do 3 divided by 4 in my calculator, I'm going to get 0.75. So the decimal equivalent for 1 3/4 is 1.75. Then to go from a decimal to a percent, I multiply by 100, so this is going to be 175%.